Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Tuesday. So a swim jig is a pretty obvious choice when you're fishing around shallow cover. Some days it's the only bait you can fish, but that same bait is also really good in the mid-range. So I want to go into what type of cover, what type of structure I'm fishing this bait around, the different sizes, and the times of year where I feel like swimming a jig is a better option than dragging a football head or a structure jig or something like that. And I guess that's where this stemmed from. A jig is a jig at the end of the day. You ask any fisherman what is one bait, and it's a jig, because if there's a flipping bite or a swimming jig bite, finesse jig, football, there's some type of jig bite no matter what time of year it's going on your lake. Here's the kicker though. Now, you may think these spots are only places where you want to drag a football head, and that's not the case. And I think in the fall time or something like that, where there's a lot of bait up on these shallow flats, a swim jig is just a more realistic, better option. So I'm going to go into all the different types of swim jig sizes, structure, the cover, different variables like grass or brush piles or rock or shell, whatever it may be. And I want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you've hit that like button, thank you for that as well. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. That's going to help me and the channel out a lot. And if you left me a comment, I will return your comment. Thank you for doing that. All right, so this isn't something I've always known about, and it's really not something I have ever really thought about till the last couple years, where I needed to be a little bit more efficient and fish a little bit faster through some of these spots, because these type spots in the mid-range are going to be patternable places. So anytime you're running a pattern, you should be getting bit relatively soon. Like, you pull up there, you throw your swim jig out, you let it sink to the bottom, start slowly creeping it back. If you're not getting bit within like 10 or 15 casts, go to the next place. You know, you got to keep checking different spots until you realize that either this pattern's not working or I'm just not going to get a whole lot of bites, but I will get bit. So here's the deal. If you have a lake that has current sometime, you're going to have hard spots, rough spots, shell beds, little rocky places where current has washed out any of the sediment. So this is going to be caused from underwater points, bluff walls, places where current is bumping up against, and they're not always going to be deep spots. You know, a bluff wall, that's going to be a deep place, but you will find these spots in really shallow water. So a swim jig in the fall time, I think, is a much better option if you just want to go in there, figure out if this is a timing deal, figure out, you know, what is, you know, the portion of the lake you should be on. But instead of slowing down and dragging something that bass probably aren't seeing a whole lot of, you know, naturally in the water, they're all focused on bait. You can get in there with that swim jig, make 15, 20 casts and go to the next spot. So if it's a lake that has no current, it can sometimes still have shell beds and rocky hard spots. And that's going to be places like a flat next to a creek channel or a main river channel. If you have brush in your lake, this is a really good technique for brush. And those fish are still going to be relating to that structure. They're going to be around brush piles and stuff like that, but it's more so the contour change that the brush is sitting on that is holding the bass. Same thing goes with grass. They're going to get in those likable grasses like milfoil, hydrilla, eelgrass, but it's more so the structure that the bass are relating to. So if it's a drain, maybe they're on the bottom, maybe they're on the top, but a swim jig is a really good bait to just fish places where bass want to live. Now, I've done a lot of videos talking about swim jig's not my favorite search bait. When I'm looking for bass, I want to find those feeding spots where you have aggressive fish that are there for one reason, and that is to eat. So I like baits that are going to track the fish through their lateral line. You know, a shiny spinner bait, fish sees that, goes over and bites it. I typically think I can go back there the next day. Same thing goes with noise. If I'm throwing a loud lipless crankbait through a spot, come back the next day, I might have to slow down, but those are places where I typically think I can get bit day after day. Now, the swim jig thing is subtle. It doesn't make any noise. It's completely different than a chatterbait or a spinnerbait or a lipless or a regular crankbait. But these type places are not about trying to just find fish. It's more so about figuring out a pattern, and for that reason, I think that the swim jig just slowly reeled on the bottom. There's brush, bump it into the brush. If you have grass, you want to be nicking the grass, and then you should be able to figure out the pattern within the pattern. That's especially important in grass. Are the fish just using the top of the drain? Are they using the bottom of the drain? Are they kind of scattered all over the place? Are you catching them on the points as well? So you should be able to figure that all out pretty quickly with a swim jig. Now, the times of the year where I feel like a swim jig is going to outproduce your football head, your structure head, your swing head, your ball head, stuff like that, slow dragging baits. For sure in the fall, I think it's a more natural presentation when you have a bunch of fish that are feeding on bait. Earlier in the year, maybe, I think that's kind of a toss-up. You know, you may have really cold water where the fish don't want to move around a lot, but a swim jig is still a very subtle bait. Works really well even when the water's super, super cold. Now, the summertime, if you have just a bunch of fish that are already fed up and they're kind of just sitting there being kind of finicky, maybe slower is your better option. But again, swim jig, still a really good bait that time of year as well. So I think you can catch them on it year round. I think in the fall, it's definitely a better option than dragging something slow. But a swim jig, very good mid-range. If you guys haven't tried that, give that a shot. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.